Hackers just drained over 200 million from Sui's biggest decentralized exchange, wiping out meme coins, draining liquidity pools, and freezing users out of their own funds. And while headlines scramble to call it a hack or a bug, this wasn't just another exploit. It was a full-blown failure and a case study in how fast DeFi can unravel. My name is Danilo, and today we're breaking down what really happened on Sui, how the exploit unfolded, who got hit the hardest, and what it teaches us about risk, yield, and opportunity in crypto right now. If you've ever LP'd, yield farmed, or chased meme coins, this is the kind of edge you need. If that sounds interesting to you, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss future crypto updates. Alright, let's get into it. The exploit started fast and hit hard. At first, users on Sui's top DEX, Cetus, noticed something strange. Meme coin pools like Loi, Hippo, and Blub were getting drained. Charts nosedived, withdrawals froze. People thought it was a bug, but within hours, the truth surfaced. This was a coordinated attack, and the numbers just kept rising. First 11 million, then 100 million, and by the time the smoke cleared, over 200 million had vanished. So, how did it happen? According to early analysis, the attacker didn't just brute force the system. They used spoof tokens, fake assets like BULLA and MOJO, to manipulate price curves and trick the DEX into thinking worthless tokens had real value. By gaming the automated market maker, they were able to drain real tokens like USDC from pools, effectively laundering garbage for gold. Once the pools were emptied, the attacker began bridging the stolen funds to Ethereum, converting tens of millions into USDC and ETH. At one point, analysts were tracking over 1 million a minute being bridged out, and throughout it all, the Cetus team paused contracts and claimed it wasn't a hack, but a bug in their Oracle logic. But the damage was already done. This wasn't just an isolated vulnerability, it was an exploit of structural design. A single DEX controlling the majority of an ecosystem's liquidity, relying on fragile oracles and unchecked token logic, is a recipe for disaster. And that's exactly what unfolded. For the people actually using Sui, this wasn't just a chart glitch or a protocol bug, it was a gut punch. LPs who had tens of thousands of dollars staked woke up to empty dashboards. Meme coins like Loi, Hippo, and Blub didn't just dip, they collapsed, in some cases losing over 90% of their value in mere minutes. Some holders couldn't even cut their losses because the DEX was frozen mid-attack. The money wasn't just down, it was gone. Cetus had over 240 million in total value locked before the attack. Afterward, the number dropped to about 75 million. That's not just capital flight, that's trust leaving the ecosystem in real time. TVL doesn't just measure funds, it measures belief. And on Sui, belief was shattered almost overnight. Even now, a lot of affected tokens are showing signs of life. Charts are bouncing, prices are recovering a bit, but don't confuse that with stability. Some of these are dead protocols running on muscle memory, and the people who got wiped aren't celebrating small rebounds, they're looking for answers. This is the part where most people tune out until it happens to them. But if you LP, farm, or even just hold tokens on newer chains, this is your warning shot. When one DEX controls most of the chain's liquidity, you're not just exposed to volatility, you're exposed to fragility, and in crypto, fragility always breaks at scale. This wasn't just a one-off vulnerability or some freak technical glitch. What happened on Sui was the result of a deeper structural weakness, the kind that's easy to miss when everything is pumping, but impossible to ignore when it breaks. At the core of this exploit was a combination of weak oracle logic and a permissionless token environment. The attacker didn't need advanced malware, they simply created fake tokens, injected them into liquidity pools, and manipulated the price curves. The system couldn't tell the difference between a worthless asset and a legitimate one. Once the DEX registered those spoof tokens as valuable, the attacker could trade them for real assets like USDC, draining the pools in plain sight. But the bigger problem isn't just technical, it's that Cetus held the majority of Sui's liquidity. When one DEX becomes the single point of failure for an entire ecosystem, any exploit, no matter how small, scales instantly. There were no fallback pools, no competing DEXs with deeper liquidity. Everything was tied to a single protocol. And that's a real lesson here. In DeFi, centralization isn't just a security risk, it amplifies every failure. The structure of Sui's DeFi stack made this exploit possible, but the over-reliance on a single DEX is what made it devastating. This was an architecture problem disguised as a bug. Sui wasn't supposed to be fragile. It was pitched as the next generation blockchain, fast, scalable, and backed by some serious money. When it launched, influencers flooded social media with coordinated tweets. VCs lined up. The branding was clean. The messaging was tight, and for a while it did work. Capital poured in, meme coins exploded, and people started calling it the quote, next Solana. But here's the thing. In crypto, narrative can't carry a chain forever. At some point, the tech gets tested, and that's exactly what just happened. The Cetus exploit exposed just how immature parts of the Sui ecosystem still are. From its reliance on a single liquidity hub to questionable Oracle implementation, it became clear that speed and marketing had taken priority over resilience and risk management. And keep in mind, this isn't unique to Sui. It's a pattern we've seen across multiple cycles. A new chain launches with flashy branding and massive incentive programs. Liquidity floods in, devs fork Uniswap, and meme coins go parabolic. But under the surface, the infrastructure hasn't been tested. Not really. And when it finally gets stress tested, it cracks. What we just saw with Cetus is what happens exactly when an ecosystem scales too quickly without building the proper guardrails. It's a warning to anyone chasing the quote next big chain, because hype grows fast, but security always lags behind. Since the attack, there's been a scramble to contain the damage. According to Cetus, roughly 160 million of the stolen funds were frozen before they could be fully bridged out. The team paused smart contracts during the exploit and later confirmed that a vulnerability in their Oracle design was to blame. Some analysts are still debating whether it was a true hack or just an exploit of sloppy logic, but either way, the money moved fast and the fallout hit even faster. The total value locked on Cetus dropped from around 240 million to roughly 75. That kind of drop doesn't just reflect pulled liquidity, it's a full-on crisis of confidence. Wanna know one surprising detail? Sui's core token held up better than expected. While it dipped briefly during the chaos, it recovered quickly and now sits only slightly down from where it was before. That's given some people hope that the ecosystem might stabilize. But it doesn't mean things are back to normal. Because what matters most right now isn't whether prices bounce, it's whether trust can be rebuilt. And for an ecosystem this young, that takes more than a patch or a refund. It takes people believing that what happened will never happen again. So here's the real question. What do you do with all this? How do you actually use this situation to make better decisions in crypto? The first step is spotting the red flags before things go sideways. If you're in an ecosystem where a single DEX handles the majority of liquidity, you're exposed. If that DEX has no audit, unclear Oracle design, or relies on community trust instead of actual security measures, you're taking on chain-wide risk, not just protocol risk. And if meme coins are mooning with no volume depth and no verified token logic, that's not opportunity. That's exit liquidity just waiting to happen. But hey, on the flip side, these kinds of disasters can make you sharper, because every time a protocol breaks, it teaches you what matters. Look for projects that reward white hat disclosures. Check if their contracts are verified and whether they have real-time TVL monitoring. Strong ecosystems don't hide behind the marketing, they show the receipts. Also, don't be afraid to ask the hard questions. Who controls the price feeds? How distributed is liquidity across protocols? Would this system survive a spoof token or a sudden sell-off? If you can't answer those things, you probably shouldn't be parking your capital there, no matter how good the APR looks. And finally, remember, surviving in crypto isn't just about chasing upside, it's also about protecting your downside. Most people learn that the hard way, but if you're here watching this, you have a chance to learn it early. With the dust starting to settle, this is where I'm turning my attention next. Not just to see how Sui recovers, but to find out where the edge might be. First, I'm watching Cetus closely. If they relaunch with better infrastructure, full audits, and clear Oracle redesigns, there's a chance they rebuild trust. That kind of comeback story can create asymmetric opportunity, especially if incentives return to attract liquidity. But if the team stays quiet or tries to downplay what happened, that's a red flag. Second, I'm looking at the meme coins and what got wiped. Some of them, like Loy or Hippo, still have active communities, and if they manage to regroup on other dexes or rebrand, we might see short-term bounces. But be careful, a rebound isn't a recovery. You want to see signs of actual development and not just green candles. And third, I'm keeping an eye on how other blockchains respond to this. When one chain blows up, it often makes others harden their infrastructure. If you start seeing chains like Base or Solana pushing security audits or diversifying their DEX landscape, that's a signal they're learning, and that's where you might want to be ahead of the crowd. But hey, the point here isn't to go all in on damaged coins or start yield hunting right away. It's to stay alert while everyone else is distracted. Crypto rewards early attention, and the best time to position yourself isn't when the headlines are pumping. It's right after the storm, when nobody's paying attention but everything's on sale. This wasn't just a bug or a bad day for one protocol. It was a real-time stress test for an entire ecosystem. Over 200 million disappeared, and for a lot of users, there was no warning and no second chance. But for those of us paying attention, this is exactly where the biggest lessons show up. We've seen what happens when hype outruns infrastructure, when a single DEX becomes a single point of failure, and when unchecked token mechanics meet fragile oracle design. But more importantly, we've seen how quickly things can go from bullish to broken, and why decentralization, audits, and transparency aren't optional. They're survival tools. Whether or not Sui recovers from this will depend on more than just price action. It's going to come down to trust, communication, and how the core teams respond moving forward. So, I'm curious, what do you think? Can Sui rebuild from this, or has this exploit permanently damaged its credibility? If this video helped sharpen your thinking or gave you something useful to act on, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.